Good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing well. It's time for another episode of How Much to Keep. And like I said, we were going to start with the offense. We were going to sweep through the offense for the more expensive players. And then we were going to go to the defense. And then we were going to come loop back around for some of the cheaper players on the offense, defense. So we're sticking with the offense for now. And we're going to go towards the one other player who is an outgoing free agent on this offense who might get some real money this offseason. We did Gerald Everett, so now we're doing Duane Brown, the several-time Pro Bowl, couple-time All-Pro, I think second team, tackle Duane Brown. He's about to turn 37. He's going to turn 37 this offseason. So there's the age concern, and that makes this calculation a little different than somebody like a Gerald Everett who was in his physical prime and in his football playing prime. Duane Brown is clearly not either of those two things. However, he did have a pretty good 2021 overall. In the summation of things, he played pretty well, and he's got a reputation that precedes him of being a very good player. And I do think that you are going to see some pretty sizable offers for Duane Brown this offseason. There's going to be some team out there that is thinking to themselves, okay, we've got all this stuff ready to go on offense. We just need a decent left tackle. We will pay, it's going to be a short-term deal. I'm not disputing that. I think he's looking at a one-year deal. But somebody's going to give him a decent chunk of money to come back, to come play for them in 2022. So, Duane Brown, let's first talk about the player. Injuries, little bit of a concern. We know he's got a little bit of a bad knee, which is why he didn't practice a lot. But you know what? He didn't miss a game last year. And over his time in Seattle, he has played in most games. So you can't say he's injury prone yet. We're not there yet. Last year, he played almost 970 snaps, almost every snap. He had 5 penalties, which is pretty reasonable for a left tackle who plays almost 1,000 snaps. Allowed 8 sacks, which was bad. Some of those sacks had more to do with Kyle Fuller or Russell Wilson than Duane Brown. I mean, I think you guys all remember Duane Brown at various points this season after giving up a sack would throw a fit at somebody. He'd get mad at Wilson, get mad at Fuller, and it would have been funny if it was any other team, but unfortunately it had to be our team. So Duane Brown had a good year. PFF backs this up by giving him a grade of 72, which marks a good starter. Not a great starter, but a good starter. With all this in mind, what kind of money is he going to get? Okay, so in looking for contracts to compare what Duane's new contract could look like, we need to be specific here. Because, like I said, he's old. He's clearly past his prime. He's at the point now where things like injuries due to age or deterioration due to age is a real concern. Honestly, it's not even really a concern. It's a fact. In 2020, Duane Brown was playing at an all-pro level. In 2021, he was good. He was a quality starter, but I wouldn't even really call him a Pro Bowler based off how he played in 2021. So when you think about it, you can kind of expect him to take another step down. Is he going to be good-ish? Is he going to be above average, average, below average? There's probably going to be some more deterioration there. He's certainly not going to get better at this age, or at least you can't expect that. But the best case scenario is that he's a good starter again. He's like a little above average. So we have to look at other players who were established as being good, but were also old to the point where the age was a concern. So here's a couple of contracts signed by left tackles in the last... this was actually about 6 years ago, of players who were 35 when they signed their contract. And as you can see, there are only really 2 we can look at here. Andrew Whitworth and Jason Peters. Now, Jason Peters may well go to the Hall of Fame. Andrew Whitworth is famous for being one of those guys who played extremely well into old age. So these are 2 pretty extreme examples. It makes sense why these would be the rare guys to actually get long-term deals despite being 35. But keep in mind, we're not even at 37 yet. We're 2 years back of that. There's a huge difference between being 35 and 37 as a highly capable left tackle. So Andrew Whitworth got $11.25 million a year for 3 years, so he actually got some long-term money. Jason Peters got 3 years at $9.25 million a year. So that's pretty steep. But if you take a look at what Andrew Whitworth and Jason Peters did to earn these contracts, Whitworth in 2016 played over 1,000 snaps, had 7 penalties, 4 sacks allowed. His PFF grade was Pro Bowl, close to all-pro level. So one of the better left tackles in the league. Clearly better than Duane Brown was last year. And Jason Peters, I believe he was an Eagle this year, had 1,100 snaps, 12 penalties, which is a lot, 4 sacks allowed, which is reasonable, and his PFF grade was basically up at the all-pro level, about 87. So both these guys played significantly better in 2016, the year before they got these contracts, than Duane did in 2021. So we're not there yet, but that kind of gives a little bit of a frame of reference. Moving on. Okay, so now let's look at age 37, because I couldn't find anybody for age 36. There's only one player I could find who signed a contract at the age of 37 as a left tackle in relatively recent history. Jason Peters, after 2018, so going into 2019, signed a 1-year, $6 million contract with the Eagles. So, Jason Peters, again, he's got a little more gravitas than a Duane Brown. Duane Brown is a very good player, but Jason Peters is probably going to the Hall of Fame. One of the better left tackles of this era. And I think that this is a decent starting point, because if you take a look at Jason Peters in 2018, which is where he earned this contract, he missed some time. Jason Peters was known to be a little bit of an injury risk, a little more than Duane Brown is, so that's a consideration, but he had 8 penalties against, he allowed 2 sacks in almost 900 snaps, which is still most of a season, and his grade was 71.1, which is very close to what Duane Brown was. So I think if you put the equation together here on Jason Peters, how he played, what his reputation was, what the injury risk was perceived to be at that point in time, we found a pretty good comparison. Jason Peters in 2019's the offseason before 2019, 1 year, $6 million. This might be a pretty good comp, but let's keep going, because why not? Let's just keep going and see what's up with some of these other players. We had to go all the way up to 38 to find a couple more. 2 left tackles signed contracts in the year that they turned 38 on this list. Andrew Whitworth again and Jason Peters again. We're seeing these guys a lot because they're special and they're built differently. They were able to play at a high level despite at very advanced age. Whitworth got $10 million a year for 3 years despite signing at 38. Peters was a little different. He ended up taking that 1 year, $4 million. So relatively radical difference between these 2 contracts. But if you take a look at Andrew Whitworth, what he did in 2019, he played basically the whole season, had a lot of penalties, but only allowed 1 sack. His PFF grade was about 73, so slightly better than Duane Brown, but not terribly far off. But again, Andrew Whitworth was somebody who had a little bit more of a, at this point, I would say, stronger reputation than Duane Brown does now, but it's not that far off. So you can see how slight little differences in perception, slight little differences in something like a PFF grade can get you a significantly bigger contract. As for Jason Peters, he missed a couple games. He didn't play the whole season. 10 penalties, 3 sacks, still played a lot, still played well. PFF grade 82.3. Honestly, based off the way he played, he would probably be in line to get a contract not all that different from what Whitworth had gotten, were it not for the fact that he was a bigger injury risk. So that's really about all we can look at here, right? There are not that many left tackles who sign contracts when they're at the age of like 37. I think that trying to figure out what Duane Brown might be able to get, the conversation needs to start here, where he signed a 1 year, $6 million deal after 2018, where he was turning 37, but he was still very good, or at least good, and you knew you were working through some injury concerns, but you knew he was a good player, and I think this is probably about what you're looking at. You're looking at about 1 year, 6 to 7 million. I would say 7 because the cap's gone up. I would say 7 just because the cap went up, but it could easily be the 1 year, 6 million. Honestly, it could be 5. There's a lot of little things that can happen for Duane Brown that could drastically affect whether or not he gets 7 million versus 5 million. He's not the kind of player where he's just guaranteed to show up and get paid. And he's not the kind of player where he's guaranteed to not get paid. So I'm going to say the likely market offer for Duane Brown in 2022 would be 1 year, 6 to 7 million. I'll go with 7. 1 year, 7 million. Would I give him that as a Seahawks fan if I were in charge? No, absolutely not. Not worth it. Not worth the risk. Just no. I don't want to. Honestly, I can't think of a price that I would be willing to pay for Duane Brown. He's not bad. Not a bad player, but not really a good one at this point either. So, well, okay, I want to take that back. He's good, but he could easily not be good in 2022 with the way he's already started to deteriorate. If he wants to come back to be like a backup for 1 year, 2 million, then sure, but he's not going to want to do that. So I say no to 1 year, 7 million. I would honestly say no to pretty much everything except 1 year, 2 million or something in that area. I don't think there's any way you can bring him back. I don't think we should bring him back. That's my ruling on Duane Brown. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. I'm going to get out of here. Look, I mean, honestly, when it comes to aging, still good left tackles, there are not that many comps. We looked at Andrew Whitworth, Jason Peters, and nobody else. Those are the only two guys that make sense to compare to Duane Brown. So, pretty elementary to split together here. What do you think? Would you be willing to pay him? See you guys later. Go Hawks.